Hey everyone, and welcome to this People Profiles webinar for CCB. My name is Katie. It's my joy to lead this with you right now. And I'd just love to hear from you. Introduce yourself, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I do not work for CCB. So just want to make that clear right off the gate. I don't work for CCB. This isn't affiliated with CCB. I have over 10 years of ministry experience at my church, been working there full time for over 10 years. And we've been with CCB for about more than 5 years at this point. And I was on the implementation team. And then now I lead all the trainings for our staff and volunteers and congregation. The church that I'm a part of is about over a thousand people, and we do love CCB. We have learned to love it, and we transferred over from Shelby. And I took it upon myself at the beginning when we were getting onto CCB to just watch every single video. I dedicated a lot of time. I was actually recovering from an injury at home, and so I just watched everything, which isn't reasonable, right? For average ministry, there's a lot of things that take our attention. So my heart and passion is to coach churches in how to use CCB effectively. I also do leadership coaching and vision planning, but with CCB, I've been able to go to some local churches and help them with their database usage, as well as with this Facebook group, helping people with questions that you guys have. So my hope is that these webinars will just help more people to use the database effectively. I'm going to tell you the real world application for how we use this database. And as we go through, if you guys have questions, just please put them in the chat. And I'll answer them. I have about an hour of content, probably shorter, and then a half hour for questions. But I'm a big believer in keeping meetings short and to the point. So if we end early, you'll have some extra time in your day that you can use. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for dropping where you're from. Love all these different states: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Massachusetts. That's awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to be doing like an intro to people profiles. And the first thing I want to talk to you about with people profiles is the fake profiles to create. Now, in the next webinar, we're going to be talking about data cleanup. So this may seem counterintuitive, but let me explain. You want to create a set of fake profiles that you can use for different purposes. The first one I'm going to encourage you to create is a church profile. So my church is called Trinity Church. So first name Trinity, last name Church. What we use this profile for is it has all of our church contact information. And if you don't have a service like MailMerge or ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit or whatever email service is trending right now, you can use this fake profile to send a MailMerge as your church. So we use this. We do use MailMerge, but sometimes we just send it out of CCB. If we have a specific search that we're sending to, like a specific mail merge that we want to send to a group of people, we use a search and then send it through the mail merge. So you can use this. The other way that you can use a church profile is to house all your templates. So whether that's template mail merges, your guest connection process, you can have all of them owned by this church profile. You can also do this with custom reports. If you have attendance reports that go out weekly to a group of people, you have the owner be this church profile. And then if a staff member leaves, they don't leave with all of their reports. You still have ownership of them, and you don't have to recreate this. Is Katie speaking from firsthand experience? Yes, I am. We had a staff member leave in student ministries that had all of these saved searches, and we were like, oh, okay, we've got to recreate all of these so we can make edits and all of that stuff. So just do yourself a favor, learn from our mistakes. It's also happens when ministry leaders move from one department to another. So if your church is like mine, maybe you do a lot of reorganization of people. And we just did that this past year. And we had a staff member who was leading children's ministry and moved to our discipleship department. And so we had to move all of their searches and reports and profile and mail merges, template mail merges over. So do yourself a favor, start. It's not the end of the world. It's possible. It just takes time. And so this is a new thing that we have just started, having a church profile that houses those templates. The next set of profiles I'm going to encourage you to create that are fake are staff and basic attender. Now, this is Mickey and Minnie Mouse for us. That's why the picture is there. So Mickey is on staff with us, and he's in all of the staff groups. He has the same staff privileges. And then Minnie is spouse and just basic attender privileges, which are none, and then in some groups as well. So I don't think Minnie's serving yet. We're hoping that she starts serving. But we use these profiles for training. So when I lead trainings, I log in as Mickey Mouse. So then my screen looks just like our staff members' screens. Because with varying skills of tech ability, sometimes we do documentation. We're like, well, my screen doesn't have that button, but yours does. Oh, okay. So that's why we use Mickey Mouse for our trainings. We're going to be looking at Mickey Mouse's profile here in a second. So we staff and basic attender is the last set of profiles I want to encourage you to create our family profile. So for us, it's the Flintstone family. And we use this for check-in, to test check-in. Now, with all of these fake profiles, with Mickey and Minnie and with the Flintstone family, the benefit is you can do different tests, you can test things out, you can test your process cues out, and it doesn't affect reporting at all. Because of how we've set up our membership types, which we'll talk about, when we run searches, we can remove them from the searches. And so it doesn't affect our numbers. It doesn't affect anything like that. We don't have to worry about going back later, removing someone from a group or that sort of thing. So these are just very simple ways that you can just kind of maximize your database and practicing different things. So we use these for trainings for volunteers a lot. So those are the 3 sets of profiles I'm going to encourage you to create. Set of family profiles. Maybe they're Marvel characters, whatever you want to do. And then a staff and basic attender, Mickey and Minnie Mouse, and then a church profile. So let's dive in. And as always, if you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I've got that up and I'll answer them as we go or at the very end. So let's take a look at the profiles. So how you get to a profile is you can do it either by going to people. I'm going to go over here and typing their name in here, or maybe you have a specific search that you're bringing up. But you can also, at any point, at the top of your screen on any page, you can start typing in their name. You just need to do the first couple letters of the first name and then a couple letters of the last name, and then that'll come up. You can hit enter, and that brings you to their profile. Now, what you see up at the top is going to be the same for everybody. So everyone has first and last name. If they have a preferred name, that would be in parentheses. And then down below, first you'll see their family position, and then you'll see their membership type. If they don't have a membership type, this will just be empty space. Then over here, you can see phone number, email, and then address as well. Everything. Oh, that is not what I meant to do. Sorry about that, guys. So when you click on that, it takes you to Google Maps. So we don't want to do that. All of these things have ellipses, and you can copy the email or send an email, and it'll default whatever your default email provider is, that will pop up. And same for, you can copy this, you can call them, or you can send a text. So sending a text will default to your, like if you have a Mac, it'll be your messages texting. So it'll be your phone. This is not that Twext feature that CCB has that we'll talk about in future webinars, but short story, don't use it. The reason for that is you don't get the replies. So it's just kind of like a one broadcast. It's a one-way communication. And we always want to have two-way communication with our people. So down below, this information is going to look different, and the tiles are going to look different depending on the information that you have in their profile. So contact information, custom fields, this will only show up if you have custom fields filled in. And then you can see the privileges that this profile has, as well as what spiritual gifts they have. Now, if you have, we use Assess Me. This will look different. This will show up as a custom field, whatever they tested at as Assess Me integrates in. So if you have integrations, they most likely will show up in the custom fields tile. But Mickey has gone in and told us these are the spiritual gifts that Mickey has, and so they're listed there. Personal information is where you're going to find gender, marital status, as well as birthdays, anniversaries, any type of that, any information like that. Family, this is where kids or other, which we'll talk about how you can add those. You can also add a family photo and a personal photo. Now, for our church, we do not have the goal of everybody signing in and using this database and finding people's information and that type of thing. So we don't push the profile picture. If that is a goal of your database, then you would want to be sure that you're getting everyone's photo and that type of thing. And I'll show you how to run searches on how to do that as well. But that's not a goal for us. So we don't have a lot of people that have their photos in the database. So this is the About tab. We're going to go over to the Involvement tab next. So this is how Mickey interacts with your church, all of the information in one place. So here, if Mickey was serving, these would be different colors and they would show up like, okay, this would be filled in if he served in October. What you want to do for these, anytime you can include family, I always turn that on. If you're like us, our church doesn't do attendance by name every week. We just head count. But for children's ministry, we do by name. So I always include family if I'm looking at an adult's profile and they have children, because then that'll change these numbers, change these colors. So you can go through, you can see the different ways that they're engaged. You can also add them to a process from here. You can add them to a form if you want to fill out a form for them. And CCB, if you've been with CCB for a while, you have probably learned that there are multiple ways to do the exact same thing. So you can add them, you can fill out a form for them here. You can also go to the form and fill it out. So just know there's not one right way to do things in CCB for a lot of the things. So up at the top, you can check if you want, like, I don't want to see any processes that Mickey is involved in for right now. But if you want to see, like, okay, I just want to see attendance, you can click on attendance and that'll show you that unchecked everything. So I can see, okay, these are the things that Mickey has been invited to or has gone to. So like, that's great. Now I'm done. I can either check all those boxes, but that takes a lot of time. So I can just click back on attendance and it goes to whatever I previously had. So that's a quick tip. You can also, over on the side, you can search if there's a specific thing that I'm looking for, if they've been involved in, or a specific form that I know the name of that they want to fill out. You can click that there. So that's the Involvement tab. It's pretty straightforward. Notes and messages. So we don't use messages that much because we don't have groups interacting within the database. So, but notes we do use. And again, there's an include family toggle, so we want to turn that on. So for leaving a note, you just type in your content. right here. So content goes here. And then you can select if you want it to be people admin or full read or appropriate leaders. So the difference here is people admin full read deals with admin privileges. So if they have those admin privileges, then those notes will show up for them. Appropriate leaders is group leaders, assistant leaders, and like department admins or coaches or whatever you call those top tiers of your group's departments. That is who would get the messages if you the notes if you clicked appropriate leaders. Now we have our staff all has full read and full write, so that's why the number is the same because Mickey is a staff member. So and then we have told our people that this only me button doesn't work. It doesn't exist. You may think you see it, but you actually don't. So don't use it. And that's just because we want to be able to share information with everybody. And so we just say that button doesn't work. No need to try. So once you have selected the appropriate one, maybe we're just going to do full read. You just hit add and then that message will show up there. And you can click the ellipses right here and you can either edit or delete the message. I'm going to delete it. So we require people to add notes anytime they make a change to contact information or membership type. And so we just say at Mickey's request, I removed their mailing address and changed do not mail membership type. So maybe it's a connection card that was filled out, a phone call that took place, that came into your office, or you just had a conversation with them at a coffee shop and they wanted a change made and you did that for them. So you're just making that note like, this is why I did it. And this is the change that I made. You can also do, we're a big believer in naming conventions. You'll see that in our groups webinar and schedules, mail merges, everything has naming conventions for us. So a naming convention you could do, this is kind of an advanced pro tip, is let's say Mickey and Minnie moved and we do move 2021. So they moved in 2021. At the end of the year, we could run a search that contains that move 2021 and get a list of everybody that moved in that last year and reach out to them. We can add them to a process queue and then have volunteers reach out to them and just say, hey, we know that you moved this last year. That's a really stressful experience. How are you doing? Can we pray with you? Is there anything you need? And that's just another way that you can connect with your people wherever they're at. So that's just, and you can do that with anything. You can search for anything within a note. If there's a specific thing that you're like always needing to search for, probably a custom field would be better, which we'll talk about at the end. So the last thing, which somebody asked a question about in the registration form, was bounce back emails. So the system, anytime there's a bounce back email, it'll be a system note that'll look like this. So as you can see, Minnie Mouse, she had her email bounce back. And so CCB automatically removes that email if it bounces back. And then it will tell you, and it says user unknown. So if this message comes up, this typically means either it's a fake email, which this is, or it's misspelled. And misspellings are going to be the highest thing. So this is why a data cleanup process is super important, which we'll talk about next week. And a connection process that you're regularly getting people's updated information so you can be sure that this doesn't happen regularly. You can run a report that has like, I want to see the emails that have bounced back. Your master administrator also gets those emails. And we've had processes where we have added them to a process queue, reached out, hey, it looks like we got the wrong email for you. Can we confirm it? And then we get the right email for them. But you may not have that time. It was pretty time consuming to do that regularly. So that's where you're regularly getting contact information is going to be super helpful for that. All right. Let's go back to the about. and look at these two fields. So first, let's do edit profile. So Mickey's called, told you, hey, I want to change my information. So you can add a new address here. And you always want to be sure that you're checking apply mailing address to family. So it does it across the board. That'll just save you a headache. And then maybe Mickey's telling us their birthday. Yep, we'll just say it's this. And then we only use allergy fields for children. School field, this is just for students. Grade, we do not use at all. So for grades, we only have we use CCB groups to delineate what grade they're in. So we don't use this field. And then if you have full write privileges, you get to see all of this, and you can add, these are all the custom fields, as well as this admin tab up at the top. If you have limited write privileges, you only get access to this top. The rest of it on the admin tab, you don't get to see, or the custom fields down here. So, but full write, you can see all of this, you can make changes and that sort of thing. So, we had somebody ask, what do we do if somebody dies, or how do I delete a profile? So you can't delete profiles, unfortunately, but you can inactivate them. So you would do that profile status, click inactivate, and then CCB always assumes that the person has passed away. So you could add their deceased date if they have passed away. But if they haven't, and they just like, I don't want anything to do with your church, which hopefully that doesn't happen, you can hit apply to the whole family, and then that inactivates their profiles. I do not want to do that though. So membership types, we're going to talk about with custom fields in a minute, but we'll come back to that. So any changes you make, you just want to be sure you hit save, and there you go. Now let's look at the actions button. So for actions, you can first add a file. We use this for testimonies. When somebody gets baptized, they're required to write out their story for us, and so we add it here. Any other things, that'd be the only thing that we would add to an add a file, because these aren't searchable. For a volunteer application, even if they fill out in paper form, we're entering it into a CCB form, because then that information can get automated into a profile and it's searchable, and that's a higher priority for us. So you can add a family member here. You can also do it at the tile, which we'll talk about in a second. Admin privileges. Let's talk about this. So my big thing with admin privileges is the more admin privileges you give out, the more trainings you need to be doing for your people. So for staff, we give full read, full write, and limited event, and that's it. Mickey has these other privileges because we use Mickey for trainings. And so some staff members will get these depending on their role, but really there's so little need to give out the full admin privilege for these other privileges that a lot of them we don't give out. Create profiles. All of our administrators get this, because when you're matching forms, you need to be able to create profiles. So there's about 5 staff members that have this one. Mail merges, the only reason to really give this privilege out is they have a feature where you can edit who sends a mail merge as me. So our pastor is Pastor Marvin. So to send an email as him, he needs mail merge privileges, and then he can set, here are the staff people who can send an email as me. So that's why you would give that one out. Forms. The only reason you need to give this out is to the people who can create forms. If you're a form manager, you have the ability to edit the form, you have the ability to match forms. You don't need to give that privilege out. Only give it to people who you want to create forms. On our staff of over 20 people, we have 3 people that can make forms. Myself, another person, and then a children's ministry person who has been deemed trustworthy to make forms. The reason we do that is because forms, you can quickly get out of hand with where you're sending automations and where you're sending people to, and it can muddy up the database. So data integrity is super important to us, and keeping people's information private and where it needs to be. So processes, this is just for creating processes that you would need to give that out. I actually think it's just me that has this. So check-in would be the same if they need to create check-ins. So we do allow our student ministries to have this because they're creating different check-in setups. So check-in volunteer, we're just getting into. So it's just me and I think one other staff member that has this. Obviously, our financial team has all the financial privileges. You want to be sure that they have that. Group privileges, there's really no need to give out that admin privilege if you use the data department admin settings, which we'll talk about in a future webinar. So really no need to give that one out. Full event, you should give that to your facilities person. That gives them the ability to change rooms and resources and that sort of thing. And then up at the top, you can see we have like our elders and deacons. They get limited read and limited write to see the things that they need to see. But otherwise, we're pretty locked down when it comes to admin privileges. Part of that is because it allows us to know who's made what changes when your list is short of like, okay, only 3 people can make these changes. So, and we do a lot of trainings. So as we do more trainings, then we give out more privileges based on the need or what's going on at that time. So that is admin privileges. Now let's move on. So check-in message, you can add this. You can add a family check-in message. So when somebody checks in, they have a pop-up and it has a message. We have not found a legit way to use this. We have done jokes in it, but we haven't found really a good use for this yet. So you can also do like a blanket pop-up statement. Maybe there's a specific event that you want to highlight or that sort of thing. You can do that for a check-in setup, but family specific, we haven't found a way to do this other than jokes. So there's that. Communication preferences. Let's talk about this. So communication settings, these are just for Mickey Mouse. So let's say someone calls and or you talk to them at a group and they're like, I'm just not getting messages when you like send them for this group or this community. So it's probably this button got unchecked or something. So you can come in, make sure they're getting, maybe you want them to get text messages from group leaders. This is not a phone number or a mobile number. So that's why those are not options. And then you can set the defaults. So when Mickey gets added to a new group, this is going to be their default. This weekly summary email, I would recommend not sending that to people. That should be something that people opt into because that's a lot of emails to get. And it's not that great of an email. All right. Scheduling communications, we want to be sure those are checked. That's a big deal. As well as those general church-wide communications. Now, you can always, when you're sending an email, mail merge, you can say ignore people's communication settings and it'll go to everybody, but you don't want to do that too much for hopefully obvious reasons. And then they can always say, remove my email address completely. I don't want any more communication. And it's not recommended. So any changes you make, you always want to be sure to hit save settings. All right, continuing down the list, we've got download contact card. So this download contact card and profile report, we don't use that much, but I could see us using it if, especially the profile report, if there was a membership interview, we could give our elders this profile report, just a summary of all their information, and that could be included with their application. It's a way that we could use that. My Fit is where they go in and change their My Fit settings. So it looks like this, and they can check off those things and hit save. All right, let's talk about privacy. So privacy settings, these again are just for Mickey Mouse. So Mickey Mouse is picking what they want just the church leadership to see. So that means the admin privileges. That means people that have full read admin privileges would see what's in this column. Groups that you're a part of. So Mickey's all right with his home number being given away to the groups that he's a part of. And then anybody within the church. So anybody that logs in, Mickey's all right if they know his work number and his email address. So those are Mickey's settings. And Mickey at any point can say, hey, I want to be unlisted, and they can toggle that. Now, with privacy settings, you want to be sure that you have your defaults set. So you do the privacy defaults over at the gear and then down to privacy defaults. So first it says when it's created, they become basic access. And if it's pending, then you can see they go to pending and then they become limited access. So you can find what those mean in the knowledge base. So I'm not going to go into that right now. So this is what we have our default set as. So groups that you're a part of, you get to see mobile and home number and email address. Church leadership gets to see the admin privileges, gets to see the work number, address, birthday, anniversary. We don't allow any information to be seen by everybody. So that's just a personal choice that our church has decided. You guys have to make what is best for you guys. So let's head back to Mickey Mouse. All right, merging duplicates. If Mickey had any duplicates, there would be parentheses and it would say like 2 or 3, hopefully not more than that, would be there. Username and password. That's what it sounds like. So username, you can change the password for them. You may have people that are like, can you just make my password this? Like, I don't want to deal with the changes. Just make it this. Yep, we can do that. You can also send a reset password email. If they have not logged in before or created an account, this would say send activation email instead of reset password. So let's talk about families. If you have any questions, drop a comment. Love to answer those questions for you. So let's talk about different types of families. Let's say Mickey and Minnie get divorced. So what do we do? What do we do about that? What we would do among the relational things, just from the database side, we would first remove from family. So doing that creates 2 separate households. Now, if they had kids, let's jump over to Pebbles Flintstone's account. So Fred Flintstone, let's say Fred and Wilma get divorced. What do we do about Pebbles? So typically, when a couple gets divorced, they're not both going to continue to attend your church. So you would just keep the kid with the parent that is going to continue to attend. If both parents, we have had this happen quite a bit, if both parents are still going to attend, maybe, and they're doing shared custody and it's 50-50, you still have to pick a kid that lives, like, Pebbles still has to be either in Wilma or Fred's profile, like in their household. We have had it where parents were like, they have to be in my profile. Like both of them were like, I will not allow it to be in the other. And it just became a sticking point. So in that rare case, and we've had that happen once, we did just have duplicate profiles for the kid. It got pretty messy from a database side of it, but that was a non-negotiable for the family. So typically though, parents are like, yep, that's fine. The kid can stay in the dad's profile. And really, if they're not logging in, they're not really even going to know, because you can still either parent can still check in, either parent can still do, fill out forms and pay for the different registrations, so it doesn't matter too much. With check-in, though, you wanna be sure that you're using that add, authorized person. So if the child is in the dad's profile, you wanna be sure you're adding the mom, to the add authorized pickup list, and you do that in check-in. So that's an important part, with this. You can also use that add authorized person for, um, let's say, grandparents or friends, whoever you want. That's a good way to use that. While we're on the subject of grandparents and friends, let's go back to our Mickey Mouse profile. So let's say that, Mickey and Minnie have their niece, Pammy Mouse, coming. So what you would do is you can start typing in, and this just makes sure that there's no duplicates. So then you hit create profile, and then you finish out the information. And you may not have any information if it's a guest. So you just want to hit save. There we go. And that creates the profile. How we use the other family position is for grandparents with their grandkids if their parents do not attend, or like won't attend if they're visiting or something. For friends, so especially for our VBS, we have a lot of people bringing their neighbors and their friends, and we just add them to the profile as other. Then if their parents start attending, we just move them over to that household, so that's not a problem. As well as foster kids, foreign exchange students, they're also other instead of child. So at any point, like with foster kids in particular, we keep them as other, and then if it ends up in adoption, then we just say set as child, and then that moves that. So that is how we use the other feature. You've really got to decide how you want to delineate people. The other thing that we keep consistent across the database is we always have the husband as the primary and the wife as the spouse. We do this because we've got several who the names, you're just not really sure, is that a male or a female? In our church, we actually have a husband and wife who their name is both Kimberly. So um, we were glad that we had already established that the husband is the primary and the wife is the spouse. That just helps with searches and all of that stuff, and we know that we're contacting the right Kimberly. So there's that. If you guys have questions, please let me know. There were also some questions in the registration about how to deal with graduating seniors. Now, there's no right way to do this, guys, with a lot of these things. How we do it is we leave them in the profile, in the households, until they start being active in the church. So, yep, when do you remove a child from a family? We don't remove them right when they turn 18. We just kind of wait until they start having some activity with our church, and then we would remove them. So maybe when they start giving, or something like that. The reason is that they may go off to college, and they may come back, and that's great, and then we can create their own household. But they may just move away. So a part of our data cleanup is to just kind of run a report. How many children do we have that are over the age of 18? And then we can clean it up from there. But we often don't use family position when we're running searches. That's not one of our search criterias. So if we are sending a mail merge to people who are, let's say, 18 to 24, we're not going to set they have to be in the primary family position, or they can't be a child. So then it doesn't really matter what family position they have, if that makes sense. So you got to decide what works for your church and what things you want to keep up keep up to date. So if it's not reasonable to be running a search every 6 months and cleaning up when people turn 18, just leave them in those households. That's not going to hurt anything. And then just account for that when you're doing searches, not using that family position. Which, if that didn't make sense, it'll make sense next week when we're doing searches and talking about that. How you deal with deaths, we talked about a little bit with inactivating them. And then we also have a process that adds the widow or widower to a process queue. And then we invite them to our grief share program and all of that. So you can do whatever is best for your church, but you want to be sure you inactivate them so they don't accidentally get a piece of mail with their name, with the deceased name on it. So you want to be mindful of that to avoid that. All right, let's move to talking about custom fields. So how you get to custom fields is you go to settings and then down to customizable fields. So these are all of the fields that you can customize based on your church. We do not use them all. This first column is pre-labeled pull downs. So these are CCB's custom fields, and we don't use them all. But I'm going to start with membership types, and I'm not going to click on every single one of these, so don't worry about that. But I do want to talk about membership types. Yes, thank you, Laura. Yeah, surviving spouses should be made primary. So that will happen automatically if you inactivate their profile and they were a spouse. It'll move them up to primary. But yes, you want to be sure you do that, especially for giving statements. Thank you for that. That's great. All right, membership types. So I would really love to know, how many membership types do you guys have? There's really no correct number, but there are ways that you can streamline it, which we'll talk about. So how many membership types do you guys have in your database? All right. So how we do membership types, and we have changed this through the years and tried to streamline it as much as possible. Our associate member, this is a constitution requirement. It's in our constitution that we have associate members. So that's a membership type. Otherwise, it would not be. Attender is pretty straightforward. A couple that I want to highlight that we've found really beneficial is financial participant only. So financial participant only is when someone gives to a mission trip, maybe that someone's going on, or a business is giving to the church, or maybe you're renting your facility and someone is paying that way. But the only reason they're involved in your church or in your database is for like they have given something financially, and that's it. So we set financial participant only. Membership types are going to be like your first search criteria. So when you're doing a search, you're going to either be selecting, I only want attenders and members, or I don't want financial participants, or participant specific, or do not mail. So they're your first line of defense when you're doing a search. CCB recommends that you do like your progression. I don't really know how that would work. I'd be interested if someone does that. We take it as, if you're looking at our people, if you're looking at our congregation from 30,000 feet up, what are the buckets that they're in? And that's how we do it. So 10 membership types. That's great. And you're working on trimming the list. That's awesome. All right. So guest and check-in guest. We have check-in guests for our families, and then we have guest if someone checks the box on a connection card that it's their first time. They get put in that. We are looking at combining these two. We had them separate because our family connection process was very different than our adult connection process. We have now streamlined them so they're more together. So really, those could be one membership type. So that's a change that we'll probably make in the next couple months. And then member, if they've gone through the membership process. And then we've added recently out-of-town member and out-of-town attender, because we have a lot of people that are out of state that watch us online and join our communities online and our hybrid experiences that we have. And so we added these membership types because, if we have something that is just in person, we don't want to invite our friends in Phoenix to an event that's just in person. So that's a way that we can just eliminate them in searches. So that's what those two are for. Parent of child and student only we use because we do have a lot of students who they go to other churches, but they attend our youth group or our youth group activities. And so we have their parents, and their parents don't go to church. They don't have anything to do with our church, but we need their information for emergencies, for summer camp, and that sort of thing. So we use parent of child student only. And then participant specific is for a person who they just attend a community or an event, but they don't attend our church as a whole. So we have Celebrate Recovery. We also, our VBS is over 1,000 children and students. So we have a lot of people that are participant specific from that. They don't attend our church regularly, but they're involved in some way. So also our sports ministries. We have a lot of people in the community that attend those, but they don't attend church. And so we use participant specific for them. So that gets them out of our general communication emails. You may be thinking to yourself, but we want to invite them to that. And we totally do, for sure we do. But we do that through relationship, not through emails. So then if hopefully through those relationships being built, then they're like, hey, I want to be a part of your church. And then we move their membership type to attender. We regularly, as a part of our data cleanup process, will run a search of our participant specific people and see how their engagement has changed, if it's changed. And then we can move them to attender that way as well. So they don't always have to tell us. I mean, most people don't even know what their membership type is. It'd actually be rare that somebody would know what their specific membership type is. So then we can do that for them based on their engagement. Do not mail is another one that we're probably going to be getting rid of. This came over from our old database. There wasn't a way to remove people from mailings easily, so we've used a do not mail membership type. So that's probably one that we'll get rid of as we go on. So we try to look at these maybe on a yearly basis, probably more intentionally, like a year and a half, 2 years. In a pandemic, we looked at these very closely and had definitions for everything. So that's what I'm going to encourage you guys to do. Look at your membership types and have a average staff member, one who's not like deep involved in CCB, define what each one is. Like, do you know when a profile says participant specific, do you know what that means? And if they don't, then you need to define that more clearly. So that's membership types. All right. So these pre-labeled pull downs, we don't use a lot of these for groups. I'm not going to touch on groups, resources, and the events. We'll touch on that in future webinars, but all of that is changed right here. All right, let's move on to these other two columns. These are your custom label fields. So first, in the center column, you have ones that pertain to a person's profile. And then the second one is what pertain to a group itself. So for people profiles, these are the pull downs. So we do, let's look at this best way to contact. So a part of our connection process, we ask like a series of questions. So we ask if what their employment status is, because that helps us know like what types of events to do and what times to do them. And then best way to contact, you can see here, we do text message, email, phone call, and physical mail. So when we have a like mass communication that we want to get out, we go through and we say, okay, well, we're going to text these people. These people are getting an email. These people are going to get a phone call, and these people are going to get a physical mail. And we communicate with them based on what the best way to contact them is. Not for everything. We do not do this all the time. We probably do this once, maybe twice a year. So this is for like our very important communications that we would go to that length. But it is super helpful when you're wanting to communicate with one person. And let's say I'm meeting with Rochelle and I'm like, okay, I need to reach out to her about this. What's the best way to get a hold of her? I go to her profile. I see, okay, she communicates best with a phone call. Okay, I won't text her then. I'll give her a call and I call her and make that connection. Or texting is the best. Great. I will text her and we'll get that communication out. So it's just another layer. It's super easy to add that to a profile, and then you can search. It also lets you know, and this is one of the reasons why we did this. We weren't sure if texting would be a great way to communicate with people. We had some doubters if whether those services would be effective, and we learned a lot of people text. So that's why we added that. So it was confirming what I was hoping, how people communicated. So it's good for that. All right. You have a limited number for these custom fields. You have 6. So you can see which ones are in use. You can see we still have an extra one down here, but our people date is all full. So you may be like, okay, we don't need this anymore, and then you can X out of it. The reason it says in use is so you know you're deleting information if you were to X that out. So when you go to X it out, it says like, hey, there's information attached to this. Are you sure you want to do that? So I do not want to do that. We use home church for our participant specific people. So our mom's ministry in particular, we created this field for them so they could say like what their home church was in the area. So then we can tell them like, hey, there's 5 of you that all attend the same church. You guys can connect there. And we give them that information that's included in a directory that they create. So you can use that way. Well, let's move on to this last column of people and for people fields. So these first are text that you can add anything to. You can see assess me. This is an integration, so that's an automatic thing, so we don't edit anything in there. And then VA comments, we use this for our volunteer application. If there are restrictions that a person has, like they can't serve with kids or they can't serve with money, that gets added to those VA comments. The thing with custom fields is all of this can be pulled in a report and a search. So for VBS and the BLAST, you can see we have 2, VBS and the BLAST notes and VBS and the BLAST parent pickup. So we have a specific field where we say like who can pick up this child, and then we put that information into this field. And then the week of VBS, we print off our Excel spreadsheets to give to the teachers. And so they can see, okay, this is the name. These are the allergies they have. These are some notes that the parent left about the child. And then here's who can pick them up. And so all of that can be compiled because we're using custom fields. So custom fields are really your like secret weapon for using your database effectively. I would love to talk to you more about how you can use custom fields if you have a specific event or a regular part of your rhythm as a church. You can use these. You can see we've just started doing neighborhood clusters where we've grouped our church in different neighborhoods, and then they function like there's like a shepherd or a care person that's a part of that cluster that then they can do meals and that sort of thing. And they all know like, okay, these are the people that attend Trinity Church that live in my neighborhood. So that's something we've just started doing as a result of the pandemic. So, but it's been pretty fruitful. Bible studies have been formed from that. So it's not why we're here. I just am excited about it. So I just want to tell you about it. All right. So text fields, they can be anything. You can add anything to them. They're searchable. And then date fields are a date. So these we don't use too much. A lot of these came over in the migration. For example, the original date created. CCB tells you when the profile was created at the bottom, but we've kept that because we just had a lot of profiles that came over. So we've kept that field. First visit, we also don't use, that came over, but it's helpful to know that. And you can know that through when they fill out a form and the connection. You can get that date that way. So you don't need this field. Baptism date, you also don't need. That's included in the profile, but that came over from our old database. But we do use the VA driver date and VA end date. So that's our volunteer process. So we require volunteers to renew their application every 3 years. So this lets us know when their end date is coming up. And then as a part of the process queue, we run a search and they get added to the renewal, and then they get into that process again. So that's how we use that date. So the date fields are super important with searches. It makes it so much easier if you're using these effectively. We don't have other things that we needed to use the date field, so that's why we've kept the other ones. But if something comes up, then I would guess we'd delete this first visit one next. That would be the next one we'd delete. So does anyone have any questions about custom fields? I'm going to move on. You guys can ask any questions. I'm going to move on to our action steps. So part of leadership coaching, this is what you're going to get from me. Let me move the screen. There we go. All right. So action steps. I want to encourage you to pick one, at least one, and write it down on your notebook, which one you're going to do after this webinar and the date that you're going to complete it by. So action steps from this webinar, maybe you're going to create some fake profiles that you can use for training, that you can use for template emails and searches. I also encourage you establish the defaults for communication and privacy settings. So first check them. Where are you set at? And do you agree with how you've set those? Then establish tiers for admin privileges. We want to remember the more admin privileges we're giving away, the more training we need to do. Next, write best practices for how to handle different types of families and how you're going to handle that other family position. So how are you going to handle divorced families? How are you going to handle kids, grandparents that bring their kids? How are you going to handle that kind of thing? Get that documented. Evaluate and define current membership types. So look at your list. Do they all make sense? Are they clear? Do you know the definitions for each? And then make changes where you need to. Also, take a look at your custom fields. How are you utilizing them right now? And then add any custom fields where needed. Start that conversation with your people. Are we getting the right information from everybody? So these are the action steps I'm encouraging you to do off of this webinar. Pick one, and then from that, write that one that you're going to do, and then write the date that you're going to complete it by. So let me show you how to run the admin privileges. I realize that's probably a good report to show you guys how to run right now. Let's go back up here. All right. So there's several ways you can do this. I'll show you in reports and metrics. Over on the side, you can go to reports and metrics, go to people, and then it's the system report of member privileges. And then I'm going to run it on the screen. So then you can see these are the privileges that have gone out and then the names of those people. So this is just a way that allows you to get a quick snapshot of like, okay, we've got 3 people that have change merchants. Is that correct? Create profiles. Wow, we're actually giving a lot of people the privilege to create profiles. Let's check that. Make sure those are the correct people, and then make adjustments accordingly and start having some conversations with people. So that is how you would run that report. And we run that report pretty regularly, actually. So first, I'd love to know, what actions are you going to take as a result of this webinar? Love to hear that in the comments. And then if you have any questions, that's all I have for this webinar. Next week, we're going to be talking more about searches, how we do data cleanup. I've created a worksheet packet that walks you through the different searches to do for data cleanup, and it has fill-ins of filling in your information and then helps you establish a action plan for your data cleanup. So we'll talk about that next week in the webinar. But if you guys have any questions, just comment them, let me know. I hope that this has been a helpful process for you, a helpful webinar for you. I'm planning on doing these twice a month on different topics. We'll just kind of work our way through the different features, and it just kind of started with people because that's why we're all here. All right. Doesn't look like you guys have questions. I'll send out a follow-up email with the recording, and you guys can always respond to that email with questions that you may have. I would love to answer them and just have a conversation with you. So that is what we have for today. Appreciate you guys spending your time taking that investment in learning how to connect and engage with people using CCB better. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your week. Thanks, guys.